Hello and welcome to Startup Europe, the podcast from Sifted where we interview the biggest and brightest names in Europe's startup ecosystem. I'm Amy, Sifted's editor, and today I'm joined by Rob Lacher, founding partner at Visionaries Club, the early-stage European VC firm focused on backing companies disrupting industries. Visionaries' portfolio includes the very buzzy Swedish AI agent maker Lovable, which you've heard us talk about on the podcast previously, and supply chain startup Tacto, German HR platform Personio, and French SaaS giant Pigment. Before Visionaries, Rob was a founding partner at another early-stage B2B-focused VC, La Familia, which he left in 2019 to start Visionaries with Sebastian Pollock. Visionaries has since raised 2 generations of funds, most recently an €150 million seed fund, a €200 million early growth fund to invest in companies post-Series B, and the €50 million Tomorrow Fund, which is focused on deep tech investments. Rob has also been a founder. Back in 2014, he set up shopping platform Amaze, which he sold to German e-commerce group Zalando 2 years later. Today, we're going to get into what's hot in B2B, the recent boom in AI agents, and the founder to Investor Pipeline. Welcome to the pod, Rob.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
And thank you for joining us in our very fancy recording studio. What brings you to London? You're usually in Germany, aren't you?
Yeah, so actually we have half of our people are based in London. So we have an office here for a few years already. And I think it's a particularly exciting week because it's London Tech Week. And I'm incredibly looking forward to this because everything from Founders Forum, London Tech Week, a lot of great people coming together. So I think there's a lot of energy and momentum in London this week. So can't wait to dive into it.
Awesome. So let's start talking with one of Europe's companies du jour, Lovable. The Swedish AI startup has been making headlines for being the fastest growing software startup ever. It made $50 million in annual recurring revenue in the last 6 months, which is pretty impressive. How did you meet the team?
So first time actually we met the team was when my colleagues VK and Bobby were organizing a dinner in Stockholm, which was a bit more than a year ago. And Anton, the founder of Lovable, was part of it. He was back then still building, starting his company. And I think it was called GPT Copilot, trying to iterate on software stacks to make it easier to democratize software engineering also for non-developers. And both of them were blown away by his first principle thinking, his product obsession. He was talking about building something very new. And yeah, so that was the first time we met him. And then first time I actually met him was at a coffee place last year in Stockholm, right after Slush, when he was shortly before he was releasing Lovable and really building what he's building today. And I still recall when we were sitting there, I've not often met founders who were so radically independent thinking in a positive way, but also in every minute asking for feedback or things they think they could do better on product, how they should build their team and everything. So yeah, we pretty much fell in love since that minute with him and then tried to do everything to do a seed round and to be part of that.
And what did doing everything to get in the seed round involve? What wooing was entailed?
Look, so everything meant, from our side, we always try to put the founder in the center. If we're trying to say we do everything, it's not trying to push ourselves first or push ourselves into a deal. We try to surround him with ingredients that we felt are most giving him superpowers for Lovable at this stage. So we made a lot of interest to US angels and founders like Gil or others who have really a lot of experience on the US market because back then he thought that was something important to build Lovable into a global company. We introduced a lot of angels that are very product focused, like Andre, the founder of Miro, who's in our portfolio, Kuhn, the founder of Framer, who's building something between let's call it Figma and a website builder, and a lot of other great angels because we thought at this very early stage now it is the best support we could bring to him, and that was basically how we kicked off the process, writing a lot on WhatsApp, meeting him many times, and then as you know, it also went into a little larger seed round than we initially expected because the company was just doing so incredibly well. So we were in discussions with him shortly before he launched, and then the launch, of course, blew us all away because they were growing so fast. So that's why the round became a little larger, and happy that our friends from Creandum then took the lead.
Yeah, so Creandum ended up leading the seed $16 million, and there were quite a few other investors as well, which suggests to me that you put in a fairly small check. What's your strategy when it comes to a deal like that where it's quite buzzy? Is it kind of better to just be in no matter what the size, or how do you think about that when it's a very hot deal?
So to be honest, we not tried to be hyped. So Lovable was something, it got very hyped fast, but that was not the reason why we jumped on it. So we were in touch long before with Anton, and we have a very clear strategy with our seed fund that we think we're only a good partner if we really lead around and if we're not like being left and right in trying to be part of every party, but really trying to have a very few investments a year, very high conviction investments where we normally have around 12 to 15% ownership. And that's what we do with, let's say, 90% of our seed investments. So all the investments you see would normally be investments where we clearly commit to being the lead, but then also put pressure on us to deliver on that promise. With Lovable, it was a bit of a special situation because the company grew quite fast from what you would say a pre-seed stage company to it skipped Series A, B almost. If you look now at more than 60 million ARR company, when we looked at them, it escalated basically quite fast to 5 million ARR. And that's why we said we invest from our early growth fund actually into this company. And that's where we have a different strategy with the early growth fund. We basically think the best setup for founders is if we don't compete with all the other large ones and force them to make a decision, either Sequoia or us or Excel or us, but basically getting one strong lead, sometimes from the US, and having all the hustle, all the entrepreneurial network that we have with visionaries to take on top. So that's why in this case, we teamed up with Creandum, investing from our early growth fund. And that's why we also didn't take the lead in that round. The deal was just too large, too advanced. And they also already did a pre-seed round with Hummingbird.
And fairly or unfairly, I've sometimes heard from other VCs say that Visionaries sometimes gets into good deals because you have a good relationship with some of these later stage funds, like you just mentioned, Sequoia. How important have relationships with other funds been to the success of Visionaries? Because you're not really that old as a fund, but I say you are one of the more established names that people, talk about.
Thank you for saying that. And look, we're working hard every day to build the best out of what we're doing, and that journey will never end. I think, again, we've all been founders ourselves before, and we try to think about visionaries really from this founder perspective, like what is the best product that someone as a founder could have at the seed stage and at the early growth stage. And if we often say in Europe that we don't think big enough and that we feel we're thinking too local and we're raising from local funds. So one aspect of building visionaries was, look, one of the ingredients that we consider to be very important for founders is that they have access to any global superpowers in terms of networks, funds, that they think building global category leaders and not just trying to stay local. And we've had great experiences with funds like Sequoia or Meritech. Alex Clayton is very active here in Europe. He led rounds in Pigment and some of the companies that you mentioned. So we are actually big proponents of taking on board actually a global fund at a certain stage because we think it really takes a founder's ambition to the next level and it gives more ingredients to the cap table than just raising from another fund in London or Berlin. And that's why we've built really close relationships with firms like Sequoia, Excel, Index, but many US funds, Benchmark, which, for example, led the round in 11x. So that's why you see in a lot of our seed portfolio, these brands lead or preempt the A round. So I think we put founders in the great position that if things go well, which isn't always the case, which is totally fine, founders go through ups and downs, they normally never have to raise. So they get in touch with these partners very early. And they don't have to do fundraising. They can do a few intimate coffee chats. They can build a relationship. And then in the case of Tacto, which you also mentioned, they were lucky to be in the position to have 6 or 7 term sheets really from some of the best partners globally. And they decided to go for Sequoia and then Index, which I think is a great setup for a Munich-based company that already has us as a local European fund. So that was a long answer to your question. But when we had the idea to add to our seed strategy, the early growth strategy, we were in the lucky position that we had LPs that would have provided us with the money to build like a 600 million or 800 million growth fund and try to be bold and then lead rounds. But we spoke with a lot of our founders and we thought it's smarter to take it step by step and to say, hey, the best product is you have one of the US funds and us at this stage. We bring an unparalleled entrepreneur network that no other fund has on this planet, and the other funds bring a lot of global capital. So right now we think it's the best product. But at a certain point, we might also change this and say, maybe why don't we just lead rounds and not have the others eat our lunch?
So you mentioned your entrepreneurial network there a few times. Tell us a bit more about that. Like who are the investors in Visionaries? What is kind of different about that network that you've built around the fund?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what makes us, I think, a little different from other venture capital funds is that we only took on board very successful entrepreneurs as our investors. So on the one hand side, 25 unicorn founders like the founders of Adyen, Miro, UiPath, Flixbus, HelloFresh. So people who have gone through the journey, from zero pre-seed to Series A, B, some of them Nasdaq IPO. And we think this is the most authentic experience to give to our founders at the early stage, to make these connections to those people that have built category defining companies before and went through all the ups and downs. But that's only one part of our LP base. The other part are family entrepreneurs. So if you look at Europe, one of our biggest strengths is, and we sometimes forget about this when we talk as a little small against the US, China, 95% of our economy are industrial world market leaders that have been built in the last 100, sometimes 200 years. And these companies, no matter how much AI you have, they're still building the physical products of this world. Many of them are world market leaders, whether it's companies like Miele, Swarovski, car companies, which let's see how long they still remain world market leaders. So they're getting quite disrupted. But long story short, we took 25 of these family entrepreneurs as investors as well, like Marco Swarovski in the consumer space, or Sunil Mittal, who's founded Bharti, which is the largest telco in India. These people give us an incredible access into the industrial economy when we look into new AI technologies that we want to deploy, when we look into helping seed founders with product market fit. So I think bringing this industrial network of European market leaders on the one hand side, together with the digital entrepreneurs that really invent the future, is what we think we need in Europe to unlock our full power. And the one last thing I'd say is why family entrepreneurs. I personally don't believe in the leadership of public companies a lot, because I've worked with them in the past, when I was shortly at BCG. These are people that are hired into companies as CEOs that are on average 6 years in office, and they don't have an incentive to take massive risks. You see it in our car industry, how they really, sorry for the good English, fucked up like really big time in not being bold to invest into electronic vehicles and all these kind of things, because they were protecting Abbott and doing another round of restructure to be even more profitable. Family entrepreneurs managing legacies over generations, they can be bold to take risks. Most of them are still pretty cash flow positive and have a lot that they could invest. So we figured out this cocktail is a little better.
What's a good example of where bringing together some of the founders in your portfolio with some of those kind of old school entrepreneurs, where that works? What's a good example of that?
There are 1,000, so if you have the whole week, we can dive into them. Maybe I just start with a few deals we recently did. So we invested into two defense companies. So we're not making these deals public for certain reasons. But to give you an example, it was one company that is already quite advanced. So they're doing 100 million revenue, have built a really leading technology in defense, and they want to enter more European markets and also more US markets. They're already active here, but not to a scale like some of the local players. And if you look at defense procurement, it's very complex, because you don't just sell one drone or one system. You have to integrate with, the whole system stack. That if you have, for example, the Royal Navy or you have the German Army, they would say, look, we're maybe needing an ISR solution for the NATO eastern flank, and that consists of maybe a combination of drone systems, tank systems, missile systems. So when you go into these RFQs, you need to integrate with the other defense players. So within only 2 weeks, we were able to connect the founders of this company to Dassault, which is a French family business, a market leader in French defense, to KNDS, which is a German market leader developing the Leopard 2 tanks and these vehicles, which is also partly family owned, to Deal, which is a family business. So they've developed the IRST system. So we were able actually to connect this entrepreneur within 2 weeks to 4 of the most important defense players that go into these RFQs. So we gave them, I think, a 3-year shortcut, because if they had to do this hustle themselves to build a relationship with these industrial old defense company. Lürsen is another example. They're also an LP in our fund. So one of the LPs that are public, they're market leader in Germany for marine ships. So that's one example, connecting the, what we say, old economy or industrial economy with the future of tech, where we felt it was really impactful for the founders. And no VC firm could normally do this, because they wouldn't have these industrials as LPs. Another example is just a founder last week from ETH Zurich, hyper intelligent, wants to build a new microprocessor using interaction nets. Very complex for us to understand, but also, how do you support this guy coming out of university that has been referenced as the smartest computer science student of his class? We introduced him to Jonathan, who is the founder of Grok. So I've been a seed investor in Grok, which is right now the fastest inference platform for AI inference. And I introduced him to Herman Hauser, who's the founder of ARM. He's a legend here in the UK. I think these two people are ingredients for this person who are among the best in the chip industry to really work not only on getting feedback on his technology stacks, but how should he approach this? How should he approach hiring, hardware engineering? It's complex to build a chip company. So Long story short, we want to back the top 1% founders, and we think these 1% founders deserve top 1% advice. This is something we couldn't give as a generic VC partner, but this is what we can enable by introducing them to these top 1% founders that back visionaries. And that's our philosophy, but that's what we're trying to take to the next level every day.
And you mentioned defense there.
Mhm.
Which are some areas that you're especially interested in investing in at the moment, or you're seeing lots of interesting companies kind of come up doing?
Yeah, so we've looked into it actually for quite a long time. So Torsten, founder of Helsing, is a good friend. He was always my favorite angel before he became a full-time founder again. And it's phenomenal, of course, the momentum that he's put behind this. So we've invested in quite a few companies, but on our side, and look, there's no right or wrong, but the way we approach this with our founders is that most of the companies we backed are quite active already and quite effective within the battlefield. So they're not that interested in a lot of LinkedIn noise or in a lot of, let's say, public marketing. So that's why so far we've agreed with them that we neither make our investment public nor do they have an interest to speak to certain media, because we have deep respect for defense. It's something different than a Lovable, than a software company, because defense means really, battlefield. It means there are lives at stake, and it means something of kind of something very critical for Europe to get right. And I think a lot of this happens sometimes better in stealth than if things are too public. So if you look at a lot of the developments in the technology stacks, they're of course trying to keep confidential because you don't want it to be on the other side. So we're trying to find a good balance, to be honest, also because VC on the one hand side is the most buzzy industry, and people love posting on LinkedIn about another great round and another great ARR step. People love showing off, with their investments, and love sharing stuff at dinners. Defense, I think VCs need to be careful, including ourselves, how to approach it, because right now there is a lot of momentum in Europe because the public media is suddenly super excited about it. The people that were climate VCs 2 years ago are now defense VCs. But I think VCs need to find a way to deal with it. Let me put it in a different way. The more impactful a technology really is in the battlefield, the less the companies would be interested in making that public. Having said that, I don't want to put like a bad word for people who are public in defense, because I think it's great that this topic is now becoming a core of the public discussion, that we get our society behind this shift from, being in peace for 50 years to, hey, why are we building a big army again, especially in countries like Germany, where because of our incredible, terrible past, it has been very far away to build an own military again. So that's why I think companies like Helsing and others, I have great respect that they are putting a bit more public momentum and really educating the society about this.
What are the key things that the defense companies you're working with need? Is there a big goal for all of them? Procurement by governments? What are some of the other kind of like key challenges for them? I'm imagining raising money is maybe not so hard for them, given it is a buzzy area. But what are the things that those companies really need to become big successes?
It's a great question, because for me personally, it's the most complex, and thus also from the support perspective, the most interesting space I've ever been in as a VC. Because what I mentioned 10 minutes ago, supporting a software founder with hiring or connecting them to, I don't know, a Jonathan who has built Grok because someone wants to build an AI chip and think about how to manufacture it, or making an introduction to a head of sales or something, is the one thing. Defense is the most complex thing I've ever seen, because it's an intersection of software and hardware right now, which is kind of something new. The space entirely got disrupted. If you look at the modern battlefield in Ukraine, which is right now the kind of core battlefield that we have here, unfortunately in Europe, 70 to 80% of the takeouts happen through technologies that have been invented in the last 4 years, aka drones and kind of these technologies are not conventional weapons. So managing that disruption is already one thing. Educating the political leaders about this in countries like UK, Germany, where these political leaders and army leaders, which are two groups again that are part of the procurement, sometimes have a career of 30, 40 years. And some of them have been Eurofighter pilots, and now they're leading aerial defense stacks or Air Force stacks, and convincing a general there that you won't see any fighter pilot or any kind of manned aircraft anymore at the front line is something that takes a lot of effort and a lot of patience, because these people have a certain aura, and they've been in Afghanistan and all these situations. And then on the hiring side, getting people attracted and getting into these syndicates of other tech stacks. It's incredibly complex because on the one hand side, the European army is rebuilding its software stack, trying to have an independent, even open source stack that they could connect to maybe a housing system, maybe a guidance system from Ukraine, or maybe quantum systems to Kiever, and then the conventional weapon systems. So this is something of an incredibly complex exercise for Europe. And that's why it's for us as visionaries where we think we can play all our superpowers. Because on the one hand side, we're connected to these political leaders. We had Ursula von der Leyen 2 years ago at Visionaries Unplugged speaking. We had a lot of the AI people just right now in Paris that are either part of our LP base or close to us, whether it's Dario from Anthropic or others that we can really connect closely with our teams on the technology layer and on the political layer. But then for the procurement part, really, we can play our cards to make these connections to the heart of our defense industry, which are in many cases family businesses. So overall, I think it's incredibly complex for a young company to get into this because if you have the best product and the best hardware and software, it doesn't mean that you get procured because you might have to localize. Like if you're a German company, you want to sell to the UK, you might have to build a factory in the UK to have a local IP so that there is no risk for the UK, to procure from someone because it's security critical. You have to lobby to the right political leaders here. So it's an exciting time. And the last point is this is happening basically in real time. We were having a dinner in Munich a few weeks ago, also Torsten and others, where we said, look, it's not about a 5-year project here for Europe. It's about the next 6 to 12 months to have a first move to get us kind of in a semi-competitive position. So we're talking AI disruption speed in an industry that has been 10 to 15-year project cycles, the slowest moving in the last 20 years, and where some of the companies also like Airbus and of course are giants that are used to long project cycles. So incredibly exciting as a VC to manufacture serendipity, try to work on these superpowers, and it's something that we try to do every day.
How do you learn as a VC about a new industry like this? How are you making sure that you understand the dynamics at play well enough to give good advice to these founders when, as you've just said, the playbook is quite different from maybe a lot of the industries you've invested in previously?
I think that's the craft, and sometimes you miss these trends and you're too late. Sometimes you're ahead of them. On our side, we call it push and pull. On the one hand side, half of the education are just founders that tell us about an incredible idea, and we're so focused on just backing founders that tell us what is great instead of us hypothesizing what is great. So let's take Anton, the founder of Lovable, which is one of the fastest growing companies in Europe right now. We wouldn't have envisioned that you can build a tool that helps 99% of the people on earth that are not engineers to turn their ideas into software and build this. And this is something that he has showed us that it's possible. And then you look into the market and you figure out, Jesus, a Wix.com is doing 4 billion revenues. They're just a website builder. A Figma or a Canva, who are just like 10% of the stacks of Lovable, are doing 5 billion, or we wanted 5 billion revenues. So this is how you enter bottom-up interesting markets and you get excited about them, and you need to be fast in, on the one hand side, trusting the founder that they will build something interesting out of it. And then normally if they build a monopoly in a space that is growing and they drive the growth, Lovable is not a monopoly, there's Replit and many others, but at least these are sometimes the strongest VC investments because they're in this exciting position that they own the market. Facebook is a good example, Google and a few of these. The other thing is more the top-down approach, which are inflection points that we normally feel as a temperature, often from our family and entrepreneurs or from our industrial LP base as a market pull. So defense is a good example because it's a basically once in a lifetime switch of a market going from zero to suddenly there's this geopolitical switch with Trump and bipolar world with China, Ukraine war. Germany just announced 800 billion in military spend over the next 10 years and all these kind of things. And that together with the insights of the disruption of the battlefield, which is just hard work on our side. So we've spoken to, I don't know how many people in Ukraine that are really using these systems. We didn't just visit the companies, and then you figure out, wow, it's a big difference if the Ukraine government directly procures the technology and pays 100 million for it, which is kind of the ultimate proof point that it's the technology that is performing best, or if the German government donates 100 million worth of drones because they wanted to donate it and they want to do it in their own country to boost the economy, but it doesn't mean that the Ukraine would procure it. So you need to go very deep to get that experience. So trying to be between this micro and macro level, this is how an opportunity like defense emerged for us, that we have the geopolitical shift, we had the disruption of the modern battlefield, And we had of course, all the new spending that has been announced, and that's a massive market opportunity to tap into. But also personally, of course, a motivation to get us more independent in Europe. So this together gives the cocktail of opportunities that we try to invest in. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong.
Which governments in Europe do you feel are most innovative or forward-thinking on defence at the moment? I'm guessing Ukraine.
Ukraine is insane. So I think if I can add one government that is really doing it well, it's actually the US, because the US is so deeply involved into intelligence of weapon systems in Ukraine that they try to gain a lot of insights from how modern warfare has changed, and they get a lot of insights on how their conventional systems basically might get disrupted, and to be just at the forefront of this happening. And they themselves try to connect the dots even with own defense companies, for example, Ukraine drone startups that might have built something innovative, or it might be a counter drone defense solution, and really trying to connect that dots to make products happen that make sure they are staying ahead of the wave of the battlefield. If I look at Germany, France, UK, I don't have the perfect insights. I think what I can say is that there is an incredible mindset shift from peacetime procurement to now this more serious situation procurement. So I think in the past, from what we have heard or what we know, like procurement was very local, very national. It was not always the best technology that won, but it didn't matter because there was no war. This playbook is really shifting now more in the direction of Ukraine procurement to say we want to get the best functioning technology at the lowest price point, and we want to make sure that we have the IP locally available, because if things really go bad, we can't be reliant on other countries. So bringing this cocktail of these three elements together, my impression is Germany is starting to move fast. If I look, so we've just been last week with a few army representatives, and it has been impressive how they took a shortcut on certain system stacks that typically would, through the normal procurement, might take years, but they made this decision within a week, because they, a little like in the startup world, you do a pilot, you look if a technology is functional, and then teaming up with these teams, even if the technology is only 80% working, to get it to 100%, is something positive for the startups, because they can kind of collaborate with the army, and it's something positive for the army. So that's what we've seen there. I think in the UK, we've heard actually really good things. There are also quite a few service firms, who built this bridge between government and startup ecosystem, because they've been involved in procurement. And then I think, this cocktail right now of the more like, we want to be prime players of the 2.0 military, like a Helsing or Anduril, and the very verticalized players, like you could quote a Quantum Systems, or you could take a Skyline from Ukraine, I think is important to have all of them in the mix.
Other than defence, other than AI, which other areas are you excited about investing in at the moment?
We don't think it's a time to have an investment hypothesis anymore. This is a bit 21, as odd as it sounds, because the moment you have a hypothesis, it's outdated, if we just look at AI. So we radically shifted that, or we've always basically, for us, it meant we're more radical in just backing great founders pre-seed and let them build. Because just look at Anton, when he started building, he came out of Deepaked, and then he built these different versions, which didn't have to do anything with Lovable. And then from all these stacks together, they figured out this great idea and then pushed it into market. And so we're actually, we're focused on B2B mainly. We're focusing mainly on digital topics, but within this, the menu of investing has never been more diverse than it is today for us. If I'm honest, a lot of the SaaS companies will become old timers, also in our portfolio, because the way you've built a SaaS company in 2015 or 16 is fundamentally different than it is built today. Lovable just has 28 employees, and they're doing 60 million ARR, and they grew in 6 months. To give you a comparison, Deal, which was the fastest growing company in my portfolio before, where I had been lucky to be a seed investor with my first La Familia fund, grew from 0 to 10 million ARR within 2 years. You just see the speed of disruption is 10 times faster. The menu of disruption is maybe 10 times bigger, because to just give you an example of my last week, I looked into 2 healthcare companies. So my wife is a doctor, so I'm always looking into technologies that free up more time for her to spend with me. So one was basically more focusing on making doctors 30-40% more efficient on taking the admin away from them. Another one was more like a receptionist for doctor practices. So that's healthcare. And then the next minute I spent time with Anton from Lovable to think about next steps. The next minute you're trying to help a defense company with the things we discussed 10 minutes ago. And another one was we invested into a cursor for debugging, which is an exciting space as well. So we stopped having a top-down hypothesis. We're in this world, everything that is AI, we're learning every week from the founders what can be disrupted, and we're seeing the impact on the industrial side.
So what does that mean for your like old portfolio companies? I mentioned Personio, the HR SaaS unicorn in the intro.
Yeah.
Are you just writing off those companies? Are you like, sorry guys, the Lovable generation is coming for you?
Oh my God, no. I think, let's put it this way. Look, Personio is a company that has a few hundred million in revenue and a very deep customer base. So what are the advantages and the disadvantages of these companies? And the next 5 years will show how they perform. The clear advantages are that these companies own customer relationships. They own SaaS workflows, and they can create contextualized value with AI quite fast. So they have the distribution channels. Imagine a Personio, shipping AI agents on their platform in HR to automate certain processes. They're in a really good position to do this. And you can see this also with OpenAI and Microsoft, like on a bigger scale, how Microsoft is able to convert their existing user base into these AI products because they have a big head start with customer relationships and they can create contextualized value. And at the end, this is what you need to sell to a customer. And where software companies that start from zero now in AI, they need to get there to provide contextualized value and not just ship an agent. So that's the advantage of the incumbents in software. The massive disadvantage is if you've built a team of 1,000 engineers and you have built a software product the way that it was built in 2016 and 2020, I'd say 80% is fundamentally different on how you build it today. So because we're in HR now, I give you an example. We backed a company in the blue-collar HR space in a pre-seed 3 months ago, and they are at 650K ARR with serious clients with a product stack that has blown us away. So basically building a traditional SaaS stack in HR that would have taken 3 years in 2016, you can now do in 3 weeks. So what I'm saying is the traditional software companies need to find a way to reinvent their engineering organization for them to be AI first, to use tools like Lovable for prototyping and not Figma or others that like in the old days, and to just move at light speed on shipping new features. Still, why a lot of the software companies have become old timers and I think will die is that some of them are built on backends that are just too static to adopt to the speed of AI. And a lot of companies now that start building, and that's why I think the year of the application layer AI is really this year, they can start without legacy, so they can just ship what the customer pulls and be very modern in rebuilding this kind of backend stack relatively fast with tools that are available today. And I think this race will be very interesting in the next year. So my prediction is, if we look at the SaaS portfolios of many European funds and including ourselves, look, I think a lot of the companies will become old timers and a lot of them will become phenomenal market leaders because they just double down on what they've shipped in the past. Just take Deal, they just cracked 1 billion ARR. They're adding a lot of AI. Personio is a good example, shipping a lot there. So let's see, but will be an interesting race.
So back to Visionaries itself. You had a new joiner earlier this year, Judith Dada, who, like you, was also previously a partner at La Familia. So some close links there. She joined Visionaries as a general partner. What's the plan for the Judith and Rob era?
Oh, the Judith and Rob era, we always say coming full circle. So we have a great joint history of since 2017 because that's when Judith joined La Familia. I still recall back then when I met her in Paris and tried to convince her to quit her well-paid job and her great career at Facebook. And we've worked together. Still managed the first La Familia fund with her, with Jeanette, until like January this year. It's now a 10-year old. We've luckily returned it many times, so we've never stopped working together there. On the other side, I've been insanely impressed, when I decided to start Visionaries to take basically our ideas a little bit to the next level. And we pulled Judith up, she became partner, and together with Jeanette, I was so impressed how she took things to the next level at La Familia, to everything that, I had built before and then building on this and taking this exponential. And it was a funny situation for me because, this was a little bit this other twin the only other twin in the market that I co-founded, where that was maybe even the biggest pacemaker for Visionaries and vice versa, because we were, of course, because the heritage was the same, so similar that we tried to work hard to outcompete each other on deals, on all the momentum. And I'm just now excited that, she's the single best person that I always dreamed to team up again to take things to the next level, because she's not just a great investor, she's also one of the very few great company builders in VC in Europe, which is a very different thing. And because we're not just building another VC firm, we want to keep reinventing ourselves to build the best product for founders. So how will the future look? Judith and I are on eye level. We're basically leading Visionaries Club, our core software funds. Sebastian, my co-founder, he's leading Visionaries Tomorrow. So that's a separate team that is focusing on deep tech. And we have great people in our team in the pipeline that actually were part of Visionaries since day one, like Bobby, who's a partner, Martin, who's a partner. We have our London team here with VK, Bella, Katie, and many others. So the core philosophy of Visionaries that we have, and I think that's also why, Judith and I are so aligned. It's number one, taking ego out of the equation. Number two, a very flat hierarchy. So we don't have a hierarchy of like, oh, partner and associate. We try to be on eye level. Very small team. We're only 6 people in the investment team. We're like one brain cell. And we prioritize attitude over linear skill set. So everyone who's working at Visionaries is incredibly hungry. And we are more going for the young, hungry, hyper intelligent people than the industry veterans, because we think this is what makes our development faster. And Judith and I will both build on that development in the next years. And hopefully we'll do a good job co-leading Visionaries.
What was behind the split to set up Visionaries Tomorrow as a kind of a separate fund?
So when Sebastian and I started in 2019-20, so that's when I finished investing the first La Familia fund, and that was when the opportunity was to team up. And Sebastian was also our first LP, by the way, at La Familia, so we have a long joint history. We were sitting together, I don't know if you heard about Ikigai, but Ikigai is a Japanese framework that is basically trying to direct you into finding really the best intersection in your life of what you love doing, what you're really good at, what has impact, what do you earn money with, and kind of these things. And we were sitting together and saying, luckily, because we had been a little financially independent also from our first exits, that the next chapter in our life is something we want to do for 30, 40 years, really until the rest of our life. And you can only do this if you're honest to yourself and you're led by your obsession and passion and wake up on a Monday morning and do what you love doing. On my side, this is just investing in software and AI, and company building. That's why I founded La Familia Visionaries, because I enjoy the joy of building on the one hand side and the joy of investing. On Sebastian's side, he's always been so fascinated about deep tech as well. And, he's been part of Greenpeace when he was young and was always looking into, climate technologies and these things. So after 2 years of investing into software, when we were building the next fund generation of Visionaries, and we do this every few weeks, sitting together to look into this Ikigai again and say, like, where are we really happy and not compromising on our obsession? And where does it feel like maybe we're only 90 or 80% there? And for him, it left him sleepless to say, like, look, in Europe, there are no good deep tech funds. Sorry, I'm just saying this. There are great deep tech funds. I mean, there's V Squared and there are so many good funds. But if you compare, like, the amount of deep tech funds to software, it's like a ratio of 99-1. So he was like, it can't be that we have all these phenomenal engineering students at ETH, Cambridge, Oxford, Aachen. Everyone is just a software investor. The second thing is that he said, like, the pace that we have with AI and software investing is so fast that I'll switch like every other half an hour or hour between the deals we just discussed. From can be a defense, can be a Lovable, can be the next enterprise procurement AI. That he felt this switching every day and this panic mode investing was something he enjoyed maybe 70%, but what he really enjoyed and what he's great at is depth, spending a week on a deal, really going deep with the founders. So together, all these things, that's why we gave us the degrees of freedom to say, look, why don't you take this opportunity on our Visionaries platform with all these great LP base that we've built to build a deep tech fund that is really going after these pre-seed seed entrepreneurs that are building on the tech side and trying to facilitating them with the exact same network that we did in software. But we did this independently because we think the teams and the DNA of tech founders were the software founders. Where you built your portfolio, it couldn't be more different. So Tomorrow invests in deals like Proxima Fusion, great fusion energy startup. They might need 200 million for a pilot plant, right? If you look at a SaaS company like Lovable, they've just raised 15, 20 million. So that's why we said we want to be consistent in our leadership and how we built the team. So he's built a great team in the last 2 years with Tong, Iris, and the fund is also has gotten much bigger than you announced in the beginning. Luckily, because there was also a lot of interest, and I have great respect that he took this, from this very comfortable position of the great momentum we had with Visionaries to say, look, I go into the cold water and take things to the next level on the deep tech side. And now they're 1/3 to the first fund.
Amazing. Final thing I wanted to ask you, as I mentioned at one point, it feels like Visionaries has built up quite a network and a brand despite being quite a young fund. You mentioned some of your unplugged events that you hold. At the Paris AI Summit, you had a very distinguished crowd of people at some of your events, like the LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, DeepMind's boss Demis Hassabis, various politicians. Last week at the VC LP conference Superventure, you were hosting drinks as well. Why is that important? Why do you need to build a sort of brand like that in this era of VC, do you think?
We really radically want to rethink VC, and not just rethink, but we want to act on this. And what you see at Unplugged is basically what we try to do every day. So Unplugged is when we open up our network, all these people are either portfolio or LPs in our fund, or they are very closely associated. And we think that we can get the most out of Europe and our founders if we make these facilitate connecting these dots between, you mentioned someone like Demis or Dario, they're at the forefront of foundational models. And we want to make sure our founders, like an Anton from Lovable, has this direct access. Lovable is built on Anthropic, right? So we think, as mentioned, the top 1% founders deserve the top 1% entrepreneurs as support. And that's our mission to build this. And something like Unplugged, it was actually just our AGM that we at a certain point said, like, it's wasted if we have all these great stories and all these great insights only to a small group of our investors. Why don't we open it up? So we did it with Unplugged in London 2 years ago, where you guys were also super supportive, in Berlin 3 years ago, and now Paris, because it felt like the heart of our ecosystem. But to give it another perspective, if you look at the waves of VC, I actually have it here because I always show it to my team. In the 19s, you had Kleiner Perkins, which, their model was the traditional hierarchy, top-down architecture, and phenomenally successful, but very, very top-down. Then you had in the 2000s the benchmark model, scaling down to a flat architecture, only very few partners, no associates, and no junior staff, very small firm, and Benchmark has been phenomenally successful in that decade. Then you had Andreessen in the 2010s, basically calling themselves the anti-benchmark. So they were basically scaling like a tech company, or building a VC like a tech company, but in a way also industrializing VC a little bit, because you're building such a massive animal of a multi-stage firm and building, like, having a few hundred employees. And I think many funds went down that avenue. If you look at many of the large US funds, Lightspeed, General Catalyst, and I think, it might be a great product at the very late stage for founders, but we want to take it one step further. So I think we're the anti-multi-stage VC firm. We believe in keeping our team small, in doing few investments, not industrializing VC, but in facilitating connections between the most iconic entrepreneurs and operators of our time with the most iconic founders. And something like Unplugged is just a little snapshot, or example on how we're trying to do this every day. So it's not just marketing, or it's not like to build a brand or something. It's for us really to experiment and take those things to the next level.
3 very quick questions to finish on. If you weren't a VC or a founder, what would you be doing?
Oh, I would love to be a tennis player, because unfortunately I wasn't talented enough, but I played a lot when I was young, and I still love it. I still love doing it.
What's the deal you most regret passing on?
Far too many. There are two I particularly regret. ESA Aerospace in Munich. So that was very young in my career in 2018, when we were almost doing that seed round with our good friends at B Squared, and thought like, it's too complex on the exit side and too local. The other one is N8N. It's a phenomenal example of a company. It's in Berlin, that has gone through many ups and downs for 3-4 years, and now is absolutely inflecting with AI. And I think one of the fastest growing, most phenomenal companies. So I'm really, really regret we didn't took the chance to invest in their seed round or Series A round in 2020.
And final thing, if you could swap lives with any other investor or a founder for the day, who would it be and why?
I'd love to be Elon Musk for one day, but only for one day in this current situation, where you're the founder of SpaceX and CEO, the founder and CEO, or not founder, but CEO of Tesla. And then you're kind of a co-CEO of the government, and then you're in this, I don't know, whatever this will be now with Trump. Like, I love to be him for a day. It was a great article from Michael Moritz and the Financial Times, actually, on the whole Silicon Valley context on this. And that brings me to the second person, to be Michael Moritz in the 90s for one day, because I think this DNA of investing non-hyped, having that depth and that way of supporting founders like Larry from Google back and other coalescence at Stripes is something you so rarely find in this momentum-driven VC world today. So he's kind of my Roger Federer in VC, and I'd love to be him one day in the 90s.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Rob.
Thank you for having me. That was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sifted Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Lovable, please scroll back to a previous episode in which me and Mimi Billing, Sifted's Europe editor, talk all about the company and why people love it so much. And if you want to hear more about the ins and outs of the VC industry, please sign up to our weekly newsletter Up Round, which you can find on our website www.sifted.eu. Bye.